In 1978, the British philosopher Brian McGee hosted a series of interviews with prominent philosophers on BBC television. It was called Men of Ideas, and it was all men, except for one episode.
Iris Murdoch, when you're writing a novel on the one hand and philosophy on the other, are you actually conscious that you're engaged in two radically different kinds of writing?
Murdoch doesn't hesitate in her response.
Oh, very much so, yes. These two branches of thought have such different aims and such different styles, and I feel very strongly that one should keep them apart from each other.
This interview happened the year that Murdoch published her 19th novel, The Sea, which earned her the Booker Prize. She also taught philosophy at Oxford for 15 years. But she had left that teaching post in 1963 to focus on her fiction writing, and now it was clear that she didn't see any overlap.
I think as soon as philosophy gets into a novel, it ceases to be philosophy. It becomes something else. I mean, I perhaps put things about philosophy into my novels because I happen to know about philosophy. I mean, if I knew about sailing ships, I'd put sailing ships in. If I knew about hospitals, I'd put hospitals in.
It's true that Murdoch had been steeped in philosophy since she was 18 and a student at Oxford, so it's hard to imagine that she could keep it out of her novels completely.
Iris was always very keen that people didn't see her novels as philosophical.
That's Miles Leeson. He's director of the Iris Murdoch Research Center at the University of Chichester. And the title of his book shows that he's one of many scholars who actually don't agree with Murdoch's view of her own work. It's called Iris Murdoch, Philosophical Novelist.
I think primarily that she didn't want to put off a general readership that would think, oh, well, if they're philosophical novels, then they're not for me. They'll be far too difficult to understand. And she was very keen on having a general readership that would read her novels and just enjoy the story.
That's what Murdoch told Brian McGee in that BBC interview.
Literature is for fun. Literature entertains.
Her literature certainly does, using elements of Gothic romance and sexual farce to draw readers in, though that doesn't necessarily make it philosophy-free.
If you go looking for the philosophy in many of her novels, it's right there underneath the surface.
As an example, Leeson points to The Bell, Murdoch's fourth novel, published in 1958. It was the first one that Leeson read, and it drew him in, beginning with its famous opening line.
Dora Greenfield left her husband because she was afraid of him. She returned to him 2 weeks later for the same reason.
That's a really punchy opening, isn't it?
Dora is an aspiring artist who'd given up art and married an older professor. She's one of a trio of narrators whose lives intersect at a religious community in the English countryside. It's an engaging and moving story, luring the reader into the inner lives of its characters and the ups and downs of its intricate plot. So The Bell succeeds in being entertaining, but Leeson also sees it as connecting directly to Murdoch's philosophical thought about moral realism. Specifically, her argument that paying attention to other people's experiences and to beauty in art allows people to understand themselves and their own realities.
The novel is really about the progress of moral development and the perception of other people.
He points to one scene after Dora has spent time with other people in this community out in the country, and she's still not sure whether she should stay with her husband, Paul.
And Dora has this wonderful experience when she returns to London, and she goes into the National Gallery and has a kind of a transcendent experience in front of Gainsborough's portrait of his two daughters.
Dora was always moved by the pictures. Today, she was moved, but in a new way. She marvelled with a kind of gratitude that they were all still here, and her heart was filled with love for the pictures, their authority, their marvellous generosity, their splendour. It occurred to her that here at least was something real and something perfect. Who had said that about perfection and reality being in the same place?
A student of philosophy could tell you it was the 17th century Dutch philosopher Spinoza, but Murdoch lets the question stay unanswered. Here's Leeson again, explaining what that moment at the museum meant for Dora.
She realises that she has to start acting as if she is in control of her own destiny and that she needs to make her own decisions, and whether that's to go back to her husband or to have a different life entirely is one that she has to work out for herself.
And this scene is just one example. Murdoch's novels are full of what Leeson calls intertwined relationships that allow characters to learn about themselves. And he says that readers can think about how we might deal with similar situations.
I'm not saying that her novels are self-help books, far from it, but they certainly do open up those major questions around how we respond to each other, to other individuals, how we get outside of ourselves, and how we pay attention to the good things in life rather than those that sort of drag us down to a more base level, if you like.
Miles Leeson and others have discovered these deeper philosophical questions in Murdoch's fiction, despite her own claim that they're completely separate.
I would be very pleased if it was impossible to tell it was the same person writing.
For Philosophy Talk, I'm Cheryl Kaskowitz.